Canada's economic reality. Is population growth hiding a recession? Canada has officially entered a recession, and according to government officials, one of the reasons may surprise many Canadians. Speaking to reporters, they acknowledge that part of the current economic weakness is linked to a deliberate decision by his government reducing immigration levels. But behind that statement lies a much bigger story, a story economists, financial experts, and policy critics have been warning about for years. A story that raises an uncomfortable question. Was Canada's economic growth truly strong, or was it simply driven by rapid population expansion? A growth model under scrutiny. For years after the pandemic, Canada appeared to be growing. GDP numbers were rising. Economic activity seemed healthy. But many analysts argued that the headline figures were masking a deeper problem. Instead of becoming significantly more productive or wealthier, Canada was adding unprecedented numbers of new residents to the economy. Every newcomer needs housing. Every newcomer buys food. Every newcomer uses services and transportation. All of this increases economic activity and boosts GDP. But higher GDP alone does not necessarily mean people are becoming more prosperous. The critical question is whether economic growth is keeping pace with population growth. And increasingly, the answer appears to be no. The rise of the per capita recession. This concern gave rise to a term that has become increasingly common among economists, the per capita recession. In late 2024, Canadian banks argued that Canada was already experiencing recession-like conditions. Even if traditional recession indicators didn't officially confirm it, they suggested the country was effectively in a recession when measured on a per-person basis. What does that mean? Simply put, if the economy grows slower than the population, each individual ends up with a smaller share of the economic pie. And that's exactly what many experts believe has been happening in Canada. GDP went up, but so did population. Take 2024 as an example. Canada's economy expanded by approximately 1.6%. At first glance, that sounds positive. But during the same period, the population grew by 1.8%. The surge was fueled by record levels of temporary foreign workers, international students, asylum seekers, and permanent residents. As a result, population growth outpaced economic growth. The outcome? GDP per person declined. And when GDP per capita falls, economists often view it as a warning sign that living standards may be slipping. Canadians are getting poorer. The issue sparked heated debate in Ottawa. Conservatives' finance officials delivered a blunt assessment. They pointed to Canada's declining GDP per capita and argued that the trend meant one thing in practical terms. Canadians were becoming poorer. It was a message that resonated with many households already struggling with rising housing costs, inflation pressures, and affordability challenges. Even the Bank of Canada raised concerns. The concerns weren't limited to opposition politicians. In 2025, the Bank of Canada released a monetary policy report after another year of economic growth. GDP had increased by roughly 1.7%. Yet when adjusted for population growth, the central bank concluded that gains in wealth were essentially flat on a per-person basis. In other words, despite economic expansion on paper, average Canadians were seeing little improvement in their individual economic circumstances. Canada's ugly growth problem. The Fraser Institute later described this period as Canada's ugly growth experience. According to its analysis, Canada's total economic output grew by about 6% between 2020 and 2024. That sounds significant. But over the same period, Canada's population surged from approximately 39 million to 41.5 million people. That's an increase of more than 6.4%. Population growth actually exceeded overall economic growth. And when that happens, each person's share of national prosperity shrinks. A historic decline. The Fraser Institute's findings painted a troubling picture. Because the population expanded faster than the economy, Canadians collectively experienced a reduction in their share of GDP. The organization described it as the steepest 5-year decline in per-person economic performance since the Great Depression. For many experts, this statistic serves as a warning that headline growth numbers do not always reflect the economic reality experienced by ordinary citizens. The big question: Canada now faces a critical challenge. Can the country build an economy that grows through higher productivity, innovation, and investment? Or will it continue relying heavily on population growth to drive economic expansion? As immigration targets are reduced and recession pressures intensify, policymakers are entering a new chapter, and the choices made today could shape Canada's economic future for years to come. Outro. Canada's recession is about more than shrinking economic numbers. It's about living standards. It's about affordability. And it's about whether economic growth is truly improving life for the average Canadian. The debate is no longer just about how many people come to Canada. The real question is the economy growing fast enough to improve prosperity for everyone already here? Only time will tell. Thanks for watching. If you found this update valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more breaking developments on Canada's economy, immigration, politics, and global affairs. Share your thoughts in the comments. Like plus. Follow for more Canada updates. Canada Common Untold. Stay informed. Stay protected. Follow for more Canadian news and analysis.